Kevin sat alone in his office, the pale glow of his desk lamp casting long shadows across the scattered customer reports in front of him. Complaint after complaint blurred together into a haunting refrain. Cold pizza, deliveries nearly an hour late, employees who were rude or just didn't seem to care. Each word felt like a small knife twisting deeper into his pride. He had built this company from scratch. Every ounce of youth, sweat, and silent sacrifice had gone into turning a simple dream into a thriving pizza brand that had spread across the city. It used to be his pride, his legacy. Now, it felt like something rotten had taken root beneath the surface, and he was powerless as it slowly slipped through his fingers. He flipped over another report, his throat tightening. Mike, his regional manager and someone Kevin had once trusted completely, had assured him again and again that everything was under control. But Kevin's gut had been screaming otherwise. The numbers didn't lie. Sales were plummeting. Loyal customers were disappearing. Employee turnover had hit record highs. The well-oiled machine he thought he had built now looked more like an engine with bolts flying loose and gears grinding against each other. He exhaled sharply, a breath that felt like it carried weeks of stress. These reports, meticulous as they were, offered only a shadow of the truth. If he wanted to see what was really going on, he had to get out of his chair and face it head-on. Then, like a jolt of lightning, an idea struck. Unconventional, risky, but necessary. He would go undercover, not as the CEO, as just another customer. The company had expanded so rapidly that most of the current staff, especially the newer hires, had no idea what he looked like. His name might still carry weight, but his face was practically anonymous. With a bit of effort, he could blend in, walk among them, and see things as they truly were, without the filter, without the fear. A few hours later, Kevin stood in front of the mirror in his apartment, unrecognizable even to himself. Gone was the crisp white shirt and slacks. In their place, a worn-out hoodie and faded jeans. A scruffy brown wig sat messily atop his head, and a pair of thick glasses concealed the sharpness of his gaze. He looked nothing like the man who had built a multi-million-dollar pizza empire. He looked like just another tired guy ordering dinner after a long day. Perfect. He grabbed his phone and placed an order for a large pepperoni pizza from the very location that had attracted the most complaints. This was the epicenter of the storm. Late deliveries, missing toppings, staff indifferent to whether the order was right or wrong. If something was broken, it would be broken there. Estimated delivery time 30 minutes. Kevin sat down on his couch, eyes flicking to the clock on the wall. Each second ticked by with a kind of mockery, like time itself was testing his patience. 30 minutes became 40, then 50. By the 58th minute, he could feel the tension rising in his shoulders. He wasn't sure if what he felt more was anger or disappointment. Finally, a knock at the door. Kevin stood up and opened it. There, on the threshold, stood a young man, his forehead slick with sweat, his uniform wrinkled and clinging to his skin from the heat and exhaustion. The fatigue was carved into his face like a roadmap of every delayed delivery, every stressed-out shift. And yet, he smiled, small, weary, but sincere, a muscle memory of professionalism. "Sorry I'm late," the young man said quietly. "It's been a rough night." Kevin took the pizza box, planning to just observe quietly like he originally intended. But something in the young man's voice made him stop. There was a raw sincerity in it, a kind of tired resilience that didn't ask for pity, just recognition. It struck a chord in Kevin, hitting deeper than he expected. "Busy night?" Kevin asked gently. The young man let out a dry, weary chuckle. "Yeah, I'm the only one on delivery tonight. Supposed to be 3 of us. One quit this morning, the other called out sick, so it's just me, running all over the city." Kevin frowned. "Just one person?" covering the entire area? That's a lot, he muttered. The kid only shrugged. I need the hours. Kevin hesitated, then asked, They paying you overtime at least? The delivery guy's smile disappeared instantly. He looked away, his voice dropping. Technically, yeah, but the manager cuts my hours on other days to keep me under full-time. Says it's company policy. Kevin's stomach twisted. No, it wasn't company policy, it was exploitation. He stared at the young man, who was no longer just another anonymous employee. He was living proof of a system slowly corroding the foundation Kevin had built. A good person, trying to make a living, being pushed to the edge by those supposed to lead. What's your name? Kevin asked quietly. Jason. Kevin nodded. That name etched itself into his memory like a warning. He'd seen enough. There was no denying it anymore. This wasn't a fluke. It wasn't a minor blip in the numbers. This was real. It had a name, a face, and he wasn't going to stand on the sidelines any longer. How long have you been working here? Kevin asked, keeping his tone as casual as he could. Almost a year, Jason replied, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, like he was balancing between fatigue and pride. I actually used to like it, but ever since they started messing with my hours, he trailed off, then forced a small, polite smile. Anyway, hope the pizza's still good. Sorry again for the delay. Jason turned and walked away, leaving Kevin standing silently in the doorway, the now cold pizza box still in his hands. He had come expecting to see carelessness, bad attitudes, maybe an incompetent manager, but this was something far more disturbing. This wasn't a few bad apples. This was a systemic problem. Kevin walked back inside, placed the pizza box on the counter without opening it. His appetite had vanished, replaced by a hollow chill in his chest. He pulled out his phone and opened the store's online reviews. What he read made his blood run colder. Deliveries constantly late, missing ingredients, rude service. Then he stopped at one particular review. A customer described watching a manager scream at an employee in front of the entire store, humiliating them over a minor mistake in the kitchen. Public degradation, like the employee was an object, not a person. Kevin clenched his jaw. He kept scrolling. More comments, more of the same. Nearly every negative review pointed back to one source: management. He couldn't keep looking the other way. Not anymore. He had to see it for himself. The next morning, Kevin dressed down in an old t-shirt and a pair of jeans. No wig, no disguise, just a baseball cap pulled low over his face. When he stepped into the store, the familiar scent of tomato sauce and melting cheese hit him with a wave of nostalgia. He hadn't set foot in this location in over a year. It looked smaller than he remembered. Behind the counter stood a girl, maybe 18 or 19. Her eyes looked drained, her expression neutral, verging on numb. Kevin ordered a slice of pizza and a drink, paying in cash. Then he asked casually, "Busy morning?" She let out a soft sigh. "Not really. Lunch rush hasn't started yet." He nodded and carried his tray to a booth near the kitchen, where he could see everything. From his seat, he watched the staff shuffle around like ghosts. A stocky man in his 40s with a stained manager's shirt stormed through the kitchen, barking orders loud enough to overpower the hum of ovens. "This dough is trash. How many times do I have to tell you? Do it wrong again and you're staying late to fix it." The young employee, barely in his 20s, kept his head down, mumbling an apology as he rushed to redo the dough. The manager offered no guidance, just walked away shaking his head, like the very sight of the kid offended him. Kevin clenched his fists under the table. The anger building inside him wasn't loud. It was molten, slow and steady, like lava gathering beneath the surface. A few minutes later, Jason walked in, still wearing the same wrinkled delivery uniform from the night before, Dark circles hung under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept. He grabbed a soda from the fridge and walked to the counter. "You're back already?" the girl asked without looking up. Jason nodded. "Picked up another shift. Needed the cash." Kevin felt his stomach turn again. Then the manager reappeared, eyes narrowing as he spotted Jason. "You're late." Jason frowned. "No, I'm not. I was scheduled for noon." The manager snapped. "I told you yesterday to be here at 11. Jason blinked, confused. "No? You didn't?" The manager's tone sharpened, his voice now edged with accusation. "So what now I'm a liar?" Jason stood frozen, lips pressed into a line. He said nothing. Kevin had seen enough. He inhaled, then stood up and walked straight toward the counter. The manager gave him a quick, annoyed glance. "You need something?" Kevin looked him dead in the eyes. His voice was calm but firm. "Yeah? I need you to explain to me why you're treating my employees like this." Silence fell over the restaurant like a wave. The cashier's eyes widened. Jason stiffened, nearly dropping his soda. The manager's face lost all color. Kevin slowly reached up and pulled off his baseball cap. "Recognize me now?" The manager swallowed hard. "Mr. Carter, I didn't know you'd be—" "Exactly," Kevin cut him off. "And I shouldn't have to be here for my people to be treated with basic respect." The room was still as stone. The buzz of kitchen appliances faded beneath the weight of what had just been revealed. The staff didn't move. Their eyes tracked every breath, every shift in posture. Something had changed, and everyone felt it. The manager forced a nervous smile, his hands beginning to tremble. "Office, now," Kevin said coldly. The man hesitated, then nodded stiffly, walking with rigid steps. Kevin followed close behind, passing the tense stares of Jason and the rest of the staff. Inside the cramped, cluttered office, the fluorescent light above flickered, casting a faint, sterile glow. The air smelled of mildew and old paperwork. Kevin shut the door behind him. "Luca," the manager started, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know you were planning to drop by today." "That's exactly the point," Kevin replied, eyes locked onto him. "Because if I have to announce a visit for people to be treated with basic respect, then it's not real, it's just theater." "Running this place isn't easy," the manager snapped defensively. "Half the staff doesn't care about their jobs." Kevin's jaw tightened. "That's funny, because what I've seen is that they care a lot. What they don't have is a leader who gives a damn." The manager shrugged, agitated. "You don't get it. These kids show up late, mess things up, and act like they deserve a paycheck just for showing up." Kevin leaned forward slightly, his voice measured and cold. "Jason worked a double shift last night, alone. He handled every delivery by himself. Then he showed up again this morning, and the first thing he gets is an accusation about being late." He let the words sink in like hammer strikes. "You didn't just fail. You're tearing apart everything I built, everything I bled for." The manager's mouth opened as if to respond, but Kevin cut him off. "I've read every complaint. Customers mistreated, orders wrong, over and over. And you're cutting people's hours just to dodge paying them what they've earned. That's not company policy. That's you." The manager's face darkened, his voice thick with resentment. "You think you can run this place better? Be my guest." Kevin didn't blink. "You're right. I can, and I will." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then the manager's expression shifted, sudden realization dawning on him. "You're firing me." "Effective immediately," Kevin said firmly. "Pack your things. You're done here." The man's face flushed with anger. "You can't just walk in here and expect to fix everything in a day. You think swapping me out is going to make it all perfect?" Kevin stayed calm, cold, unwavering. "No, but it's a start." The manager let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. Well, good luck with this mess. Then, without another word, he shoved past Kevin and stormed out, slamming the office door behind him. Outside, the muffled sound of whispering voices and startled reactions filled the air. Kevin took a deep breath, grounding himself. This was just the beginning. He stepped out of the office. The entire store seemed to freeze in that moment. Staff huddled around the counter, their expressions a mix of shock and uncertainty. Jason stood nearby, arms crossed, watching cautiously. Kevin scanned the room, his experienced eyes passing over each face. "I'll keep this brief," he began. "This store has been run the wrong way for a long time. That ends today." The young cashier hesitated, then asked in a soft voice, "So..." Kevin nodded. "Yes, and from now on, things will be different." Jason spoke up, voice low but steady. "Different." Kevin met his eyes, his voice firm. No more cutting hours to avoid paying overtime. No more managers yelling at employees like they don't deserve basic human decency. No more understaffed shifts that leave people burned out. The atmosphere began to shift. Skeptical glances turned into silent attention. A few employees exchanged looks, uncertain but slightly hopeful. "I'm not just here to make speeches," Kevin continued. "I'm staying for the entire day. I want to see what's really happening, and I want to hear from each of you." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You're working the floor with us?" Kevin nodded. "Starting now." There was a beat of silence. Then, for the first time that morning, Jason cracked a genuine smile. Not forced or polite, but real, a smile of relief. Kevin rolled up his sleeves and walked behind the counter. The staff exchanged glances, unsure of what to believe. A CEO behind the line, working side by side with them? It felt surreal. The young cashier handed him the first ticket, a simple cheese pizza for pickup. Kevin took the slip and turned to Jason. "Show me how you guys make this." Jason looked at him for a moment, then nodded. He pulled a fresh dough ball from the cooler and dropped it onto the floured counter. His hands moved with practiced rhythm, flattening the dough and spinning it gently in the air. Kevin studied every movement, then stepped forward to try. He pressed the dough outward, as he'd seen, but when he tossed it, it landed awkwardly, lopsided, on the counter. Jason let out a quiet laugh, then leaned over to fix it. "Not bad, for a rookie," he said with a grin. Kevin chuckled. He didn't feel embarrassed. He felt grateful for the honesty. For the rest of the day, Kevin worked shoulder to shoulder with the team, answering phones, folding pizza boxes, even doing a few deliveries with Jason. Each task was more than just work. It was a silent promise that he would never distance himself from his people again. When they returned from one of the deliveries, Kevin gathered everyone in the dining area. "All right," Kevin said. "I've seen enough. This store has serious issues, but I also see people here giving it everything they've got, even with the odds stacked against them. So, what do we do next?" The team turned to face him, fully attentive. "First, we're fixing the schedule. No more cutting hours. If you work overtime, you get paid overtime. No exceptions." A few employees exchanged looks, the relief in their eyes unmistakable. "Second, we're hiring more help. Jason can't handle all the deliveries on his own, and the kitchen can't keep running short-staffed forever." Jason nodded slightly, silently confirming what everyone already knew. "Third, we need a new manager, someone who values your efforts. Until that person's in place, I'll be dropping by regularly to make sure everything's heading in the right direction." The store stirred with quiet chatter. Then, a young man from the kitchen who had been silent the entire time finally spoke up. "You're really coming back?" Kevin nodded. "I built this company from nothing, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of what really mattered. That ends today." For the first time all day, the staff's faces began to soften. Fear gave way to cautious trust, replaced by a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, things were truly going to change. Later that day, Kevin sat down beside Jason. "You thought about quitting, didn't you?" Kevin asked gently. Jason let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, honestly, I almost did." Kevin nodded. "I don't blame you, but I want to make this a place worth staying." Jason studied him for a moment, then said quietly, "If things really change, I'll stick around." Kevin extended his hand. Jason shook it. Firm, resolute, no more words needed. The promise had already been made. Through action. As Kevin stepped out of the store, he turned to look back. That morning, it had been a place falling apart. Now, because of the people inside, it was a place that could be reborn. They deserved better, and Kevin knew without a doubt that he would do whatever it took to make sure they got it. That night, Kevin returned to his office. The warm light of his desk lamp wasn't enough to chase away the storm still swirling in his thoughts. He pulled up the store's online scheduling system, and what he saw confirmed everything. The schedule was a patchwork mess. Shifts were thrown together haphazardly, with no concern for employees' availability or personal lives. Some people were working back-to-back until they burned out, while others were barely scraping by with enough hours to survive. Kevin leaned back, rubbing his forehead. Firing the former manager had been necessary, but now he faced an even bigger question. Who would lead moving forward? Not just anyone, not another outsider who might repeat the same mistakes. He needed someone who knew the store, knew the people, and knew how to lead with dignity, not control. His phone buzzed. A text from a regional supervisor. What happened at the store? Word spreading fast. Kevin sighed and replied, "I stepped in personally. There were serious problems. I'll explain everything tomorrow." He then opened his laptop and began drafting a company week email to all managers. The message was clear. Cutting hours to avoid paying overtime is unacceptable. Any store caught doing it would face immediate audits, no exceptions. The next morning, Kevin arrived at the store earlier than expected. The smell of rising dough and tangy tomato sauce greeted him like an old memory. The morning crew was already prepping for the lunch rush. Jason stood at the counter, organizing delivery bags. "You ever thought about being a manager?" Kevin asked. Jason looked up, caught off guard. He wiped his hands on his apron, hesitant. "Honestly, never really crossed my mind." Kevin nodded. "You know how this place works. You know what's broken, and more importantly, you care about the people you work with." Jason hesitated. "But is that enough?" Kevin crossed his arms, steady and sure. "You worked a double shift alone when no one else would. You spoke up when something wasn't right. That's leadership, even if you didn't realize it." Jason glanced toward the kitchen, watching his coworkers in quiet motion. He exhaled, like setting down a weight he didn't know he was carrying. "I never saw myself as the kind of person who runs things. But I also don't want someone new coming in and screwing it all up again." Kevin smiled softly. "That's exactly why I'm offering it to you first." Jason looked him straight in the eyes. "If I take this, I need to know things will really change. I don't want to be trapped enforcing bad policies." Kevin respected that. "Fair enough. If you take this role, you'll have a direct line to me. Any issues, any concerns, you come straight to me." Jason looked around the store, this place he'd almost walked away from just days before. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, I'll give it a shot." Kevin held out his hand. Jason shook it, this time with confidence. The transition didn't happen overnight, but over the following weeks, change took hold. Kevin remained involved, not as a distant CEO, but as a leader who showed up. Jason adapted quickly, balancing operations with real empathy. More staff were hired, the workload eased, schedules became fair and predictable, employees stopped feeling drained and overlooked. Customer complaints dropped, service improved. The difference was visible and felt. One afternoon, Kevin sat in a booth, going over reports on his tablet. Jason walked over and placed a delivery bag on the table. "You order something?" Kevin looked up, surprised. Jason shook his head with a smile. "No, it's from the whole crew. Everyone chipped in." Kevin opened the bag. Inside was a neatly boxed pizza, and on top, a handwritten note. "Thanks for actually listening." He looked up at Jason, who simply shrugged. "We just wanted you to know we appreciate it." Kevin nodded, a quiet weight lifting off his shoulders. After years of chasing numbers, expansion, and efficiency, it was this moment, this gesture, that reminded him why he had built this in the first place. He closed the box and looked around the store with renewed resolve. "I'll make sure it stays this way." Jason gave a small nod, then headed back to work. Kevin remained seated, watching the store in motion. Alive, steady, hopeful. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was finally running his company the right way again. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Moments of Quiet Truth, where we believe that the human spirit is never truly defeated, only waiting to rise.